vast majority of them weaken on approach for lots of factors. There's the interaction with land. There's the frictional torques that are induced by that. There is dry air entrainment. There's jet stream. There's cooler waters. You can go on and on about why so often hurricanes weaken on approach. But let me go back to that graphic, because I'm telling you, this thing, we have never seen the likes of this before, where it intensified to landfall. And you can see that just in the last 24 hours, what happened to the pressure. The day before, the pressure was 965. 24 hours later, right at landfall, 919. I mean, just in the few hours leading up to landfall, in 3 hours, we lost about 10 millibars. That is remarkable. It was undergoing RI, rapid intensification, right up to the coast. And that, unfortunately, left to scenes like this. This is a before picture of Mexico Beach. And essentially a Cat 4, Cat 5 borderline hurricane with the surge over 10 feet and the winds gusting probably over 150 miles an hour does this. And this is exactly why we tell you to leave and evacuate, follow the officials' orders when asked to do so, because there is no safe place when a system like this makes landfall. And hopefully we won't see any more of these in the coming years. But coming up in the next block, Dr. Erica Navarro and I will be talking about perhaps some of the conditions that led to this unique outcome and the intensification all the way to landfall. Erica, I'm going to send it back to you now.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Postel. Certainly a lot of things that we still need to look into and talk about with Michael. But for right now, there are other parts of the country that will actually see some tropical impacts. We have some moisture making its way towards the southwest and in the south here from Sergio as it crosses over from the eastern Pacific. This storm is weakening as it's crossing over, likely to be a depression later on today, but wind speed still estimated about 45 miles per hour and moving off steadily to the northeast here at 24 miles per hour. With that moisture that's coming into play across the southwest, we have the potential to see more flash flooding. This, of course, coming on the heels of Rosa a few weeks ago that left a lot of rainfall across the state of Arizona. It's possible here across southern New Mexico and in and around Las Cruces, off towards the western part of Texas near potentially Lubbock, maybe even Abilene. You can see some of this moisture here causing that potential for flash flooding. No warnings ongoing at the moment. That center of circulation is still down over Mexico. We do see some of that moisture now moving its way into the southwest, but it's later on today. This likely will get picked up and focused around a stationary boundary that's down near the surface. That moisture coming in here as it's lifted up and over that boundary could have the potential to produce very high rainfall rates and, of course, potentially lead to that flash flooding here in some of these areas across the south. So taking a look, even heading into the early weekend here tomorrow, Sunday, we'll likely see that moisture persist here, moving just slowly off to the east, hitting some areas that have already received a lot of rainfall so far this year as the next dip in the jet stream comes into play. So through the weekend, we could see a lot of moisture coming in. So in terms of the totals, a couple inches here across the state of Texas. There could be some areas that see some locally higher amounts. You can see 2 to 3 across portions of northeastern Texas, maybe Dallas. You see that yellow color there, maybe even a little bit more. But some of the areas in Oklahoma also has received a lot of rainfall so far this year. That's an area we have to watch very closely for the potential for flash flooding. Even Arkansas, you could see quite a bit of moisture out of this. So in terms of the potential likely here across Texas and Oklahoma, but of course still so many areas with Michael that we have to watch very closely. Let's go ahead and take it back out to the field now with Jim Cantori. And Jim, an exceptional storm. The images that we're seeing are just incredible. How are things faring this morning in Florida?
Well, I mean, if I can say one thing, I mean, the weather's certainly a lot nicer. It's at a point now where it's almost, there's a little bit of a chill in the air, which, of course, if you don't have power or, you know, which, of course, nobody does here in Panama City, it's nice to open the windows and actually let the air in so you can actually stay in your home should you be there doing repairs at this point. But it's just, you know, everywhere you go, Erica, there's just damage like you see right in through here. All right, let's get the latest from FEMA. We got a breaking news conference we want to join right now here on the Weather Channel.
Storms that the country's seen since 1851, and I think the TV cameras are revealing what that looks like, particularly in the Mexico Beach area, but there's a lot of damage inland. Last night, the storm also pushed through North Carolina and Virginia. We had fatalities. I think there were up to 5 fatalities in Virginia, a lot of flash flooding and localized flooding. So We're communicating with all states and making sure that we identify any shortfalls that they may have in the initial response period at this time. But we're largely focused still on search and rescue in some of these areas. There was a tremendous amount of debris. And so when you look at the damage in Mexico Beach, that is where the ocean rose potentially 14 feet with wave action on top and just shoved buildings out of the way. And when you have that type of damage, it takes some time to get in and actually go through and do the search and rescue. We hope to have 100% of the initial search and rescue operation done in Florida today as well as Georgia. But we are moving tremendous resources that have already come into play and into place today. We have commodities in the state ready to go out and support those who are seeking food and water in many of the areas to backfill what the state is already doing. We have our disaster survivor assistance teams that are in place today. We're going to concentrate on the shelters. We have several thousand people in shelters, and that's where we're going to concentrate first. But the president proactively declared an expedited major disaster declaration for the state of Florida last night. And that includes individual assistance for 5 counties. And these are just initial counties. We'll add more counties as we are able to do damage assessments. But if you live in Bay County, Florida, Franklin County, Wakulla County, Taylor County, and Gulf County, and you believe that you've experienced damage, we would encourage you to contact 1-800-621-FEMA. Or if you can, it's better to go online if you can, and you can access this at disasterassistance.gov. You can also download the FEMA app to seek assistance from FEMA, and we can start to pre-register people. We've already registered almost 4,000 people this morning, so we're hard at work trying to do what we can to help people. The other goals outside of the life safety search and rescue mission is stabilizing the health and medical care system in Florida. The hospitals took a tremendous hit. We've been assisting the state and local governments to evacuate patients, get them stabilized. It's my understanding that we've also set up what are called decompression units, over 3 right now. These are basically triage centers to backfill medical support where we've lost the capability of some of the hospitals, and we'll continue to work and stabilize those areas. Obviously, we're doing damage assessments and moving DSA, our disaster assistance support team, in to start registering people. But the other focus is on communications. You have to be able to communicate to appropriately respond. And we're trying to do everything we can to get the private sector vendors, the Verizons and AT&Ts of the world, to get in to try to get their systems back up and running, so that not only so that citizens can begin to communicate on a normal routine, but that's going to take some time because the infrastructure was damaged. It's still not safe to return, particularly to Bay County, Florida. Doing so, there's no infrastructure there to support you. Go back into. When you have this type of destruction, there's gas lines that are there, there's power lines that are down. In doing so, you're putting your life in danger, and we ask you to be patient, before you just try to rush back into those areas, and understand that we're doing everything that we can to get the roadways open and trying to stabilize the situation so that people can go home and figure out how to put the rest of their livelihood back together, down there in Bay County and some of those areas. Again, with the transportation lifeline, we're doing work across all of these lifelines, 7 lifelines. We're actively supporting safety, security, health and medical, food, water, and shelter. Obviously, power is the most important part. We have over 30,000 people in the private industry that are trying to get the power grid back up and running. But as we said yesterday, the infrastructure took a tremendous hit, particularly where you saw storm surge and 155-mile-an-hour winds encroach, and then it moved inland in southwest Georgia. Communications, transportation, and hazardous materials. That's where we're focused right now, and that's what these folks up here represent, and how the federal government is coming together to support our governors and the local governors. I have specifically spoken with Governor Deal this morning in Georgia, as well as Governor Scott in Florida. I'm also anxious. I will be getting downrange tomorrow night and be on the ground Sunday and Monday as well to make sure that we're also doing everything that we can down there. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken Wedeleski with our partners from NOAA to talk about impacts.
And good morning, everyone. Good news from the weather aspect of things. Michael will be moving rapidly out to sea today. Just a few more hours of heavy impacts along southern New England. High surf, heavy rainfall, strong winds. Fortunately, that'll be shoved well out to sea by tonight. We will see, though, the threat for river flooding continuing in Virginia, down toward the North Carolina, Piedmont, even toward coastal areas well into next week as runoff trickles down toward the south. However, we don't see any significant weather patterns moving into the area over the next week, so the river should recede at least by the middle to latter half of next week. So no significant weather threats beyond this. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Next is Health and Human Services, Dr. Kevin Yeske.
Good morning.
All right, guys, Brock Long and his team going through a full brief this morning on the situation. A couple of things to point out, I think, that are very significant. Number one, the fact that he hopes to have all of the search and rescue done today. He hopes, again, to have that done. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but it's kind of nice to at least know there's an end to the tunnel. That talked about how much debris there is, how hard it is to get to these areas, especially the areas that are combined storm surge as well as structural damage, which we have so many, especially on the eastern side, the Mexico Beach, the eastern part of Bay County. He mentioned how really coming down and supporting yourself in Bay County is nearly impossible. There's no power. There's no cell service in a lot of these areas. There's no food really to get in here. That will come in as we go on in time, so hang in there. But there's really not a time for mass amounts of people to come back in through here. There's just nothing to support that. Now, speaking of the communications issue, he did speak specifically to that. He's trying to obviously urge the private vendors to do what they can. But again, just like everybody else around through here, that's one of the problems is getting back in here and being able to fix some of these structures that have been so heavily damaged. There's trees to remove. There's debris to remove before you can actually get to some of these towers that have been damaged or severely impacted, obviously, by Michael. So a lot of issues here, certainly with all this. But I'll tell you one thing, I've been through 98 of these things, and they all leave an impression on you. And this one is certainly one that kind of boggles my mind. This is the strongest western eye wall I've ever been in my entire life. Okay, but the eastern eye wall potentially 145, 155 miles per hour, and you have to wonder when they go back and do some of the assessment, the damage assessment. The fact is we had a 919 millibar hurricane come ashore. All right, Andrew, which was a Cat 5 that was reassessed, was 922 millibars. Now, just because the pressure's close does not mean it's necessarily going to say, okay, well, that was that pressure, it's going to be the same strength. They're going to have to look at the structures and see what kind of damage it actually caused, maybe even get some additional wind measurements. That'll be done, obviously, post. All right, let's bring in Dr. Erica Navarro. And Erica, actually, I'll kind of pose this question to you. Do you think when they do reanalysis, there's a chance they could bring this up to Category 5?
Yeah, Jim, absolutely. You have to wonder, with the pressure that low, would the wind speeds pick up in response? Was it in the process of doing that? I think there's a lot that can come from that reanalysis.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the pressure was very similar to Andrew. It was roughly a similar size, but it's really the pressure gradient, as you know, that matters and how that pressure changes. We'll just have to wait and see on the forensic analysis of the damage patterns.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Let's talk a little bit about the history of Michael. Remember, Michael was just a tropical depression last Sunday when it brought rain, wind, and waves to Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba. It was bumped up to a tropical storm at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday afternoon. But then Michael rapidly intensified as it moved into the Gulf of Mexico, becoming a strong Category 4 hurricane, of course, with those wind speeds of 155 miles per hour when it made landfall near Mexico Beach in Florida early Wednesday afternoon. And now a number of you, viewers like Robert D., have been asking us on social media, is Michael just some more evidence of climate change? So I want to bring in Dr. Greg Postel to talk a little bit about this issue and the factors that contributed to the rapid intensification.
Yeah, let's speak about that rapid intensification, because our producer's saying we have some video to get to, and that is a dramatic change from the video that we saw when it was just emerging from the Caribbean into the Gulf of Mexico. Let's go to some of that video. So it goes from those light showers over Cuba and areas nearby to that in just a matter of days. Something really radical happened to the intensification as it moved northward.
Absolutely. I mean, this is whiteout conditions.
Yep.
I mean, tremendous. And we actually have a video of the eye wall itself as viewed from inside the eye. We can go ahead and take that image. Look at that. That is just vertically stacked, complete stadium effect there. That is a classic category of major hurricane eye there.
Yes, and inside, there's the eye where it's calm, and then a few miles away is a raging tempest. We're going to go now to explain exactly what we think might have been behind some of this rapid intensification that led to destruction, just like you're seeing right there. And take it away, Erica. You've been looking at some of the patterns over the southeast in recent months.
Right. You know, we've been talking about the tremendous heat that the East Coast has seen. This was the warmest September on record for 85 cities across the southeast. A very strong and dominant high pressure was present over this area that led to these extreme temperatures. And mind you, this has persisted into the month of October through the October 10th here, just a few days ago, 13 degrees above average.
Really warm atmospheric pattern over the southeast U.S. that was associated with, in addition to that, really warm waters in the Gulf of Mexico, way above average, right along the path that Michael went. And if you think about that, the warmer water, everything else being constant, you can get a stronger hurricane out of it. Now, there's a lot there, but the idea is that Michael, moving northward, went over waters that were way warmer than average, certainly warm enough to support a Category 5 hurricane, with an average water temperature over this region in the mid to upper 80s, something we never see at the end of September and early October.
I was going to add, usually at this point, we get those cold fronts, the shear, the dry air. There are factors that would limit this potential in October.
And look at what happened to the pressure in just the prior 24 hours, moving over that very warm water. This thing was strengthening incredibly quickly in the few hours leading up to landfall. Never seen anything like that in the northern Gulf.
Yeah, it's exceptional, and it smashed the October records here in terms of pressure. Hazel, going back to the 50s, used to hold that record with 938 millibars as that central pressure at landfall. Michael was astronomically different. 919 millibars, that's an exceptionally low pressure here. And just look at the impact. Look at how clear this eye became here as it intensified and made landfall. Just absolutely devastating situation.
All right, well, here's some aerial shots of damaged pier in and around the Mexico Beach area in Panama City, Florida.
Everything was so fresh in the beginning, but that plug quickly faded. Luckily, there's new Febreze Plug. It cleans away odors and freshens for 1,200 hours. Breathe happy with new Febreze Plug.
If you have a water emergency, call the certified professionals at Stanley Steamer and get back to dry.
For 24-hour emergency water restoration,
call 1-800-STEAMER. Stanley Steamer gets your home cleaner.
If you've ever needed more capacity, more features, and more for your hard-earned dollar, the time has never been more right. Get guaranteed lowest prices on top brands like the Samsung laundry pair, now just $648 each. The Home Depot, more saving, more doing.
Who knew?
Yeah. So you're with the UPS store?
Yes. In fact, we printed these right here.
Oh, I thought you guys just did shipping.
No, we do printing, packing, faxing, notarizing, shredding, mailboxing, copying, taping, binding, consulting, designing, returning, storing, grading. Oh, and of course, shipping.
so you're into shipping?
We also do printing, packing, faxing.
Come into the UPS store today for everything your small business needs. And of course, shipping.
Why bother mastering something? Because when you want to create an entirely new feeling, the difference between excellence and mastery is all the difference in the world. Introducing the all-new Lexus ES, a product of mastery. Experience amazing at your Lexus dealer.
Behold, the Pacifica Hybrid. It's half gas, half electric. Kind of like I'm half mom, half comedy sensation. What?
More like half mom, half got dressed in the dark.
Half drama queen, half accessory stealer. Yeah, I know that's my bracelet.
Mom, how long are you two gonna do this?
With a 566-mile driving range. I can do this all day. Oh! Hope we see some of your friends.
Oats seem pretty simple, right? They're actually kind of extraordinary. See, oats contain a soluble fiber called beta-glucan. Beta what? Stay with me here. This is where it gets interesting. This fiber really doesn't like cholesterol, so it traps some of the bad cholesterol and shows it a thing or two. Making Quaker Oats a delicious part of a heart-healthy diet. High five, fiber.
Nothing outlasts Energizer Ultimate Lithium. Hey, you can't do that. Can he do that?
Yeah, he's good.
Energizer Ultimate Lithium. It's the #1 longest lasting battery.
Welcome to American Ninja Warrior.
Don't miss the premiere of American Ninja Warrior Jr. Tomorrow at 7, only on Universal Kids.
At Firehouse Subs, subs are hot, hearty, and extraordinary. Every sub helps provide life-saving equipment for first responders. Nice, Jaws of life, Lisa. So more people eating at Firehouse Subs means more life-saving equipment donated to first responders. If you're gonna have a sub, have one that makes a difference. How's that taste, Jim?
Try the new Firehouse Pub Steak. Savory steak with crispy onions and our rich beer cheese sauce.
Firehouse Subs. Enjoy more subs, save more lives.
I gotta tell you, there's not a place in Panama City you can get around without finding anything left untouched.
The damage is so widespread, and the cleanup is going to take such a long time.
It's hard to even put words to what has happened there.
This is exactly why we tell you to leave.
Looking at those pictures, certainly hearing descriptions from my colleagues at the Weather Channel on certainly what they saw, and trying to even put it into words. Sometimes you just can't, because it boggles the mind. These are just not images that you see every day. These are places that people have formed and shaped their lives around, and in some cases, they are forever changed. We have new cuts now on the coastline and the intercoastal barrier islands. This is pretty interesting here. This CubeSmart self-storage, I don't think was opened yet because this fence was blocking it off. But when you think about, I mean, this fence goes about 100 yards that way, and you can see it comes around and turns the corner. Now, the wind here in this western eye wall was from the west, northwest. And so it blew for about an hour really, really hard. And we probably had sustained winds over 100 miles per hour for a long period of time. And that was enough even to take a fence that has holes through it and blow it over. All right? And I even think, too, in terms of the destruction that I see behind me here, the roof may have not gone first on that building. We may have just seen the entire cinder block wall pushed in there. And then the roof fell on top of that. At least that's the way it looks right now. All right, Dr. Greg Postel, you've certainly seen your fair share of damage like this, and, unbelievable. This is on the western eye wall. This is probably the worst damage I've seen ever on the western eye wall. On the eastern eye wall, you've got the forward motion. You've also got the surge in a situation like that. But this storm has changed. Michael is no longer with us, but it's kind of gone through a transition over the last 48 hours that so many of these do as they come in the southern latitudes and move north.
Jim, that's exactly right. I mean, we saw this thing really intensify rapidly right up to the coast in a way we've never seen before in the northern Gulf of Mexico. And it is now completely evolved into a sort of an extratropical gale that is going to be over the North Atlantic. I mean, if you go back and look at some of the pictures as it came into the coast, I mean, obviously that's a clear sign that you have a major hurricane moving in the region. And now, if you think about what it looks like on the satellite pictures, it looks like that. It almost looks like a nor'easter, with very little identity as a tropical system. It is moving away and carrying with it all the bad weather off to the east fairly quickly. So let me show you some of the rain patterns there now that we've got across parts of eastern New England. Not a lot left in it. We have one more rain band to work through across parts of eastern Massachusetts and eastern Rhode Island, maybe now leaving even the eastern tip of Long Island. Once that outer rain edge is gone, that's it. We are left with a wind out of the northwest, maybe 15 to 25 miles per hour, and that is a much drier breeze. So that's really good news. And then we can say goodbye, finally, to Michael, at least for us in the United States. Its story may not be over, believe it or not. because as it moves out over the North Atlantic, you can see the clouds getting shredded by very quickly. It is going to preserve some of its integrity and likely be a North Atlantic gale that rapidly moves across from North America today, right here, to the middle of the North Atlantic tomorrow, right here, and then perhaps into Europe by the weekend and early next week, so that by Monday, the leftovers of Michael may move through Portugal. How about that in just a couple of days' time, getting caught up in that jet stream and rapidly moving through. So the story with Michael is not complete for everybody. Unfortunately, Lisbon and areas nearby may see some significant rain and wind out of this. Of course, nothing like we've seen in the northern Gulf of Mexico, which again, I cannot lose sight of these images of a rapidly intensifying hurricane, unlike we've ever seen. Not only that, but occurring in October, where so often these systems fall apart as they move northward. But in the 24 hours, just 24 hours prior to landfall, Michael went from 965 to 919 millibars. Rapid intensification in the final few hours, Jim, and left to the kind of destructive scenes we've seen that you've been covering so amazingly well. Jim.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. I can't wait to see the post-analysis on this, just because, especially when our communications went down, there's so many things that we didn't see. But we had really good radar presentation of this. We had some mobile Doppler radars out there, one of them right in the path of this thing at Tyndall Air Force Base. So remember, the Tyndall Air Force Base anemometer failed at 129 miles per hour. We'll be right back.
Olay Total Effects. The power of 7 benefits, all in one bottle, without costing $100, $200, or $400. Enriched with vitamin B3 complex for beautiful skin. Olay.
I'm Jimmy Dean, and I wish I could tell you how I feel about a morning like this. And that includes a good hearty breakfast. You need something to kind of warm the whole body up and get it going. It's a great way to kick off your day.
Today, millions of Americans, just like you, are coping with serious medical conditions from falls and other complications. These medical conditions force many people out of their homes because they can't get up their own stairs.
We were wondering whether we would have to move our bedroom downstairs and just live in half a house.
We just couldn't stay here if we didn't have it.
Acorn Stair Lifts has the perfect solution.